welcome to the OCB Natural Edge. I'm your host, Sean Sully Sullivan, and I'm joined by Aubrey Warwick and Jody Shakely Wright, my two co-hosts. Hey, we want to get right into today's episode. Today, we're going to start with a full breakdown on the wellness category. Just like we did bikini, we will leave no stone unturned when it comes to wellness. For competitions, we're going to be talking about the OCB Eclipse in Colorado, the Super Show in Richmond, Virginia, and for pro tip, we have a question from the field that's very interesting on what people do wrong when prepping for a show. When we get to Spotlight, I got some changes on that we're going to discuss. But now let's jump into our wellness category. So first thing we need to talk about wellness is exactly what are we looking for with wellness. Now it's a lower body dominant look. That is true. And everybody gets that right with our lower body dominant look. But Jody, as a judge, what's the number one thing you see being done wrong with our wellness competitors when they're coming into a wellness category?
Truthfully, that they're not coming in lean enough. I would love to see it's getting better. It's getting more competitive. And I'll say that we see some shows with just 3 athletes and they could all step on the Orton stage, but as a rule, come in more conditioned than later.
And you do see that with the newest category, right? You're going to see that when people are trying to figure it out.
Sure.
And that's the biggest thing we saw when we first introduced wellness. It blew up. It was huge. And then it's trying to find its level. And some of the people are criticizing on the judging in what's happening. Sometimes it's too soft. Sometimes it's too lean. That's why we want to jump in right now, and we're going to talk about it. So first thing, we always like to start with symmetry, because as we said before, symmetry is the first criteria we look at. It's not the number one defining criteria, but it's the first thing we're going to look at. And the symmetry for wellness is lower body dominant with good upper body density. But here is the caveat. There are some women who hold a preponderance of their lower body fat in the lower body. And it makes them look lower body dominant, but they're not lean enough. And wellness is based on a standard of muscle. So just because you're lower body dominant, if it's not muscle lower body dominant, you don't truly have the symmetry. And this is something that I talk to a lot about with coaches at shows. We'll turn around and go, hey, my client was the most lower body dominant person up there. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to judge it on muscle because it's a bodybuilding category. And I think that's the number one thing that I see is that leanness effect of that lower body domination. So yes, lower body dominant, but it has to be a very muscular lower body dominant. What is another thing that you're starting to see in the wellness category in the shows that you guys have been around?
I see some athletes a little frustrated with their placements in figure or bikini, so they become wellness curious and they try out wellness. And I love the OCB because we do encourage athletes. I mean, if you don't care for one category, you can try another. But I think it all comes down to your silhouette. If you want to optimize your placement, choose the right category.
Exactly. And this is where I encourage a lot of the competitors that are in bikini and that are in figure that aren't placing well, that have some of those structural shortcomings to come in. So we've already talked about symmetry, the lower body dominant with good upper body density. Now that upper body density can't be width. That's figure, that X frame. That is a figure X frame. We're going to be getting into a figure deep dive in an upcoming episode. So that density needs to be a thickness without the width. So I used to always tell our judges when they're looking for the perfect symmetry, remember all of those figure competitors that we judged in the past, that you'd always say to yourself, what a great lower body that they have. It's just too bad they can't develop the width necessary to get the X frame to place higher. Or all those bikini competitors that you'd have that you'd always say, listen, your legs are just too hard and not streamlined enough to fit into the bikini category. This is why we added wellness. So that brings us to definition. Wellness competitors are more defined than a bikini competitor, but less defined than a women's physique competitor or a figure competitor. So more definition than bikini. Now, what does that mean? Well, last week we talked about bikini, and you're supposed to be showing the clear delineation between the quad and the hamstring, but you don't want to have any other detail than that. You don't want to see the splits between the quads, and when they're standing in their front pose, you don't want to see the thyroid going down the side of the thigh. These are some things we should start seeing in the wellness category. So there should be some more quad ham definition. When they're standing from the front, you should start seeing the outline of the quadriceps, not as clearly defined and as popping as you would in a figure silhouette. Also, from the back, you should be able to see the thickness and delineation of the traps and the little cookie cutter muscles in the upper back with some more delt cap than you would have. A little bit more in the abs, a little bit more in the serratus. So I would say about 10 to 15, maybe 20% harder than you'd want to be for bikini. So this is a harder look and a more defined look for wellness. Also, for the size. Now we've talked about it. That size, that symmetry, it needs to be a lower body dominant and it needs to be comprised of muscle. But in the upper body, you should see a thickness. So more density than width, but not so much density that's overpowering and it looks a lot more like a women's physique competitor before they flare their lats out. So you want to see some delt caps. You want to see some additional back thickness without the width, and good full sweeping hams, good quadricep muscles, some delineation in the hamstrings. So when they're standing from behind, if you start seeing some of the faint outline of the hamstrings, where that would be bad in bikini, that would be fine in wellness, as long as it's not to the same level as you would want to have for women's physique or for figure. Did I leave anything out as far as our wellness physique?
I don't think so, other than if you're struggling in the figure or bikini category, my suggestion would be, is it easier for you to make the improvements to excel in those categories, or would you be better off moving over to wellness? I think that would be the one thing I would add.
Yeah, Aubrey, as a bikini athlete, I mean, you actually have a look that if you really wanted to pound your lower body, you probably could actually slide into wellness. You'd had to add some.
Oh gosh, thank you. I think and this is where there is always kind of a gray area, because it's like, oh my gosh, I live in my body and I see where it's most challenging for me to build my quadriceps. I'm good at building my hamstrings and glutes. So I think that, if we continue to play to our strong suits, and it's okay to have like this limbo period, but you want to really focus on revisiting all these talking points that you just made, Sully, and to take notes on this, gang, because as you can experiment with figure posing and bikini posing and wellness posing. That can also help set you free and become more decisive on if wellness is the right category for you.
And tying that back into like the last episode, the question was, how do I determine what category I fit best into? Well, if you're spending all your time doing just bikini poses, trying to fit into bikini, you might miss the boat. So you might want to try doing some figure poses. Learn the wellness poses. Now, the wellness poses are quarter turns. So let's go over those first. So you're going to have your front pose, which looks a little bit like the bikini front pose. Then you have your quarter turn to the right. Now, in your quarter turn to the right, this is more a side shot. So you're going to have a left and right side shot. So on that front shot, you want to have your front pose. You want to have a little bit more transition. So you're facing the judges a little bit more with that leg extended out, as you can see in these photos that we're showing. And then on the side poses, each one of these side poses would look a little bit more like a bikini front pose with a little bit more of a twist, because from that side, we want to see the delineation between the quad and the hamstring. We want to see where the glute ties into the hamstring. We want to see the serratus. We want to see both delt caps. And then from the back pose, it's the traditional bikini back pose. So that is still the best way we have found to judge wellness from the rear. So we do replicate the bikini back pose as opposed to going with one of the figure poses or the quarter turn pose for women's physique. So
Like,
that
I wanted to add something to what you're mentioning. And, with both figure and wellness, symmetry, like with all categories, is extremely important. But when you experiment with figure posing, wellness, and then bikini, I will tell you, since there are fewer poses to be judged in bikini, I'm going to let you in a little secret of mine. The left side of my body is underdeveloped. And thankfully, because I am in bikini, my front pose, I pick my best side. Okay.
Yes.
Where that's when I do coach people with wellness posing or figure posing. All right, I got the upper body, looks great. And you can see blatantly where I would not necessarily fit in the mold of figure, ideally, where bikini would be, I would fare better there, especially with wellness. If as I'm doing the quarter turns, I can see clearly how much I need to work more on unilateral movement. So that's me personally. But if anyone else shares like maybe a past injury and your body is not developing symmetrically, that's where I kind of can lean towards bikini better.
All the little tricks of the trade. That's what you're getting here, Natural Edge, folks. All the little tricks and twists of the trade. Yeah, that is true for bikini, and we have no plans on changing that. That's another question we get from the field a lot. Are you going to go to quarter turns for bikini? No. Bikini has, technically, it has its symmetry round, but it also has the walk to the curtain and come back. Why do we do that? So we can see exactly what is jiggly, what's not jiggly, and when you're walking fore and aft, are your quads splitting and are you showing, all this feathering? And when you turn around and you're walking to the rear, the hamstrings popping, and so we can, it gives us a better determination on the level of leanness. But yeah, that is a good point why we do that. But wellness, I have to say, I was just so overjoyed when we got wellness. We actually spent a good 12 months. We didn't just turn around and say, hey, wellness is the new thing, throw it up there. We, as a leadership team, actually spent 12 full months analyzing the physiques of the bikini and the figure competitors to determine, is there a body type that would benefit from actually adding the wellness category? And there was. I remember sitting there with Marjorie, one of the other members of the leadership team, and she's like, I'm trying to struggle with this thing you're talking about, wellness. And the figure competitors were out. And I went, hey, Marjorie, look at competitor number 7. What do you think of competitor number 7? And she goes, oh, wow, what a great lower body, nice, dense, full, whatever. It's just too bad. She just doesn't have the structure. She'll never get the lat width necessary for figure. And I looked at her ear hole for a second, and she turned around and she looked me in the eyes and she went, oh, I get it. Yes, that's why we added it. So, ladies, if you are in that transitionary period, that transitionary type physique, you just can't get the width for figure. You just got too much lower body development for bikini. You tend to get a little harder than softer, but you can put on muscle a little bit easy. Wellness is the category for you. So I hope the wellness deep dive helped you. Now it's time for Pose Down. Jody, what shows do we got that we're going to be featuring this episode?
First is the OCB Eclipse in Denver, Colorado, promoted by Tunisia English, and that was on April 12th.
I choose the OCB and natural bodybuilding because I want to see where I truthfully can go, just me and my own grit.
The most rewarding part about competing is just seeing what you're capable of. I think just the resilience of it. I think from competing, I just know that I could conquer anything I set my mind to.
I would say to somebody thinking about competing for the first time is you have, you will, and you can do amazing things. Why not let this be one of them?
Next show we have promoted by a very dynamic couple. You know him as the expediter extraordinaire, Donald Showtime Graves. And he teams up with his wife, talk about a power couple, Karen Graves, and they host the OCB Atlantic Super Show. That's in Richmond, Virginia.
I'm Genevieve Perez, and I just won my pro card, and it's actually my first time competing in OCB. I want to go the natural route.
I just competed in the OCB Atlantic Super Show.
My name is Olua Paula Akibo. I am the newest pro, two-time pro, by the way, in Open and Masters.
So I just won my pro card. To be honest, I don't know how to feel.
So I'm Karen Graves.
And I'm Showtime.
And we are the promoters for the OCB Atlantic Super Show. We've been promoters for the last 5 years here in Richmond, Virginia. And we absolutely love the OCB. We love this sport and we love our athletes.
Now it's time for Spotlight, our feature where we spotlight our OCB athletes. Now, as I alluded to earlier in the episode, we're going to be changing Spotlight around a little bit. So instead of always doing an extensive interview with somebody involved in the OCB or one of our champions, we're going to start featuring more athletes each Spotlight. Starting next episode, each one of us is going to take one athlete apiece and do a deep dive into their competitive career, what they're doing for the OCB, and just some comments of what we think the future holds for them. Now, I'm going to do all three athletes this episode to get the ball rolling. So my first athlete is the one and only David Cole. Now, David started back in the OCB in 2021, earning his pro card and winning debut, novice, and open, first show ever. He moved on to the Yorton Cup that year, and he placed in the top 5. As a matter of fact, from 2001 until last year, David has placed in the top 5 in every pro show he has entered. He's also won multiple pro shows, including the Presidential and the Uprising. Now, David is known for his abdominal development. If you take a look here, this man doesn't just have a 6-pack. He's got an 8-pack. I swear he has got some of the best abdominal development. As a matter of fact, at this year's Yorton Cup, we're going to have 4 returning men's physique Yorton Cup champions on stage at the same time doing battle. And David, I know that you are up to the task. So outstanding width, abdominal development, and just a great overall physique look. Now, the next athlete that we want to spotlight is Elizabeth Gangle. Now, Elizabeth is our Yorton Cup champion from last year in the women's physique category. She had a meteoric rise in the OCB. In 2023, she won her pro card at the New York State Natural. And you're going to see a trend here. She won the debut, the novice, and the open, earning her pro card in her first ever event. Then she competes in her first ever Yorton Cup, winning the overall women's physique title in a stacked lineup. This past year's Yorton Cup was one of the deepest women's physique lineups I can remember. There were 2 former Yorton Cup champions on stage with her, and it was a battle tooth and nail. But when you look at what we're looking for women's physique, which is a well-balanced physique top to bottom, feminine muscle, and good muscularity and a high level of definition, this girl's brought it. And check out that V taper. Those have to be some of the widest lats I have seen on a women's physique competitor in as far back as I can remember. So outstanding job, Elizabeth, and I know you are coming back to defend your title. And our final athlete we're going to highlight is Constance Baker. Constance was our 2023 Jordan Cup Wellness Champ. Now, Constance is another one who got her rise quickly. Start off, her first OCB event and her first competition ever was the Jack King's Muscle Classic, where she won the, you guessed it, debut, novice, and overall wellness. Then she jumped into the OCB Jordan Cup in 2023, and she was our first wellness champion. Now, 2024, the lineup for wellness was even bigger and better than it was the year Constance won, but her improvements were immediately noted. Right there in the thick of things, and she was right down to the wire for another top 3 finish at the Jordan Cup. Now, I know Constance is going to be back at the 2025 Jordan Cup, and I know there's going to be even more improvement. But there it is, folks, somebody who won their pro card in their very first show, right into a Jordan Cup, and still a highly competitive top 3 world champion physique. That's Constance Baker. All right, now it's time for pro tips. As I said, we've been getting a lot of good questions from the field, and this one comes from Josh, who I was talking to at the Garden State. And Josh's question is, what is the number one thing you see people doing wrong when prepping for a show?
All right, I'm going to take this one first. So the number one thing that I see that people do is they start to doubt their coach, and they start to ask other people who really don't know what they're doing about what they think that they should do. They say, well, do you think I'm lean enough? Or they start asking all these questions, and they get a lot of different answers. Well, I think you should do this and that. I can't believe your coach has you doing that much cardio. So it just breeds more doubt. And I personally have had experienced this when coaching certain people to compete. They're newbies, and they're suddenly making these changes within a week's time. And you're like, well, wait, we didn't talk about this. So now we have all these other variables that add as distraction and doubt from their number one goal, which is to succeed at their first show by presenting their best package / transformation. So that is what I see a lot.
Yeah. And for me, assuming that cheats should happen with your nutrition prep. And you know, as I got into bodybuilding, I mean, I've been strength training my entire life, but when I started competing at the age of 43, I heard about these cheats and I heard the chatter. And since then, of course, I've been to a number of shows, and the chatter continues. Oh, what do you cheat on your meal plan with? What do you cheat on during prep? And so my first season, I had an extra bowl of cereal, and I texted my coach the next day, and she gave me the best advice ever. She said, thank you for your honesty. Your competition is not eating cereal right now. And that's when it clicked for me that, you know what, the cereal, the Chick-fil-A, the Pop-Tarts, those are all going to be there after your show. They're not going anywhere. We live in a day and age where you have Starbucks and Chick-fil-A on opposite sides of the street now. So give yourself the opportunity to dig in hard, go for perfection, because why not? You're going to stretch yourself beyond what you've done before, and you're going to have the opportunity to step on stage and know that you've left it all out there. And that is growth. And that's a tremendous gift that you can give yourself. So I'm here to tell you the cheats are not supposed to happen.
That's a good one.
And cheats and refeeds are two different things.
Yes.
Some people have a refeed where they'll eat clean stuff, get a little bit of calories. I have seen people turn around and that refeed turns into 2 pizzas and a dozen donuts. That was me. I did that once. But anyway, my pro tip is you wouldn't go on a journey and get dropped off in the middle of the woods if you didn't have a map and a compass, right? The number one thing I see happening from new competitors and old, they'll turn around and they'll go, oh, show 20 weeks. Okay, yep, let me just jump on a diet. And they just jump on a diet and they start cutting calories and adding cardio and changing all these variables and hoping that something mixes. They have no idea where they were at the start. One of the things that I always did and used to have my clients do is to set up a baseline diet. Take 3 or 4 weeks without doing anything at all. Monitor everything you're eating and monitor how many calories that you're burning. And that's going to give you a baseline level of calories. Then you know how many calories you're taking in. You're also going to know what the compositions are. You're going to know how many grams of carbs, proteins, and fats you're taking in, and you're going to have your energy level. Now you have your baseline. You know exactly how many calories you're taking in. You know exactly what your variables are. You know exactly what your macros are, even if they're not clean, and you know what your exercise level is. And then when you change a variable, you already have data that you can go in and change. You're probably going to realize, like I always did, you're eating way too many carbs and way too many way too many simple carbs and not enough complex carbs. So let's say it's 3,000 calories. Well, now you know at 3,000 calories, you're maintaining your body weight, you're maintaining your energy levels. Boom. All you do is you just drop 10, 15% of those calories and you convert it to healthier foods. It's going to start the process going along. It's way better than turning around saying, hey, I've got 18 weeks to prep. I have no idea how many calories I'm eating. I'm just going to start with 1,500 calories a day and do an hour of cardio. Where do you go from there? Right. So I would say take an extra 2 to 4 weeks, baseline your diet, find out exactly where you are and what your metabolism is doing, get your data, make your adjustments from there. So that's my pro tip. All right. Hey, as always, thank you for joining us on Edge. We enjoy hosting this. We need your comments and your feedbacks. As you can see, we started changing and tweaking some of the program now. That's based on the feedback that we're getting from the field. We said it for episode 1. We'll say it again. This is your show. We're just the talking heads, and we want to make it good for you. So in closing, please hit a like, give us some comments. If you got some idea for material, let us know. We'll cover that. Train hard, be safe, stay natural. Bye.